It's a pleasure for me to be here. Thank you. I make these promises, which I never fulfill, which is I should come back again and give a lecture about the work, but we'll have to do that. But today, I think there's a different kind of program, which I don't know what it is. My office usually keeps these secrets away from me because I may always say no to everything. So I don't know exactly the format of today. I don't think it's very thrilling to be a teacher. I think what I think is important, that I've always thought that the connection between ideas and education and practice should be quite close. And I think there is always, I find something very refreshing about teaching. I think it's not because one wants to take ideas from students, but I think it's this, discourse between, let's say, the students and the architect or the teacher, whatever, is a very important component of the practice, or of practice, because through it you can both develop ideas which are, I think, seminal to both aspects of architecture. Unfortunately, in the UK, there's a real break between practice and education. Those who are teaching are not working in practice, and those who are practicing are not teaching, and I think it is important to do that. So in American schools, it's possible. In German schools, it's also Austrian schools is possible. So this is part of the research, which I think has to be done with a very important focus about what we are researching. Because people think research for the sake of it is enough, but I don't think it is. I'm not really embedded to the organic. I still think things could be in flux. While Patrick, his nickname is Patrick Metric, is embedded to the parametric. I think that I did not really predict the enormous influence computing would have. I believed the influence of three-dimensional work would have on the object or on the work. And I think that research was done in three-dimensional drawing 30 years ago as a precursor for the current, even the programs on computing. And I could predict, I'm not prediction, but I wanted it to go that way. And I think that the amazing change is the shift from two-dimensional to three-dimensional. And that has been of incredible, I think, value. If you also know, my early work also dealt with the idea of the sequence of going through space like as if cinema. So it was like animation, and but of course done non-animation form. So all these things, actually, they were the precursors, the genesis, I think, of some of these methods. I think what is most exciting is that the method of drawing became the method of construction or building. The early work was all about juxtapositions, deforming objects, adjacencies, and then later on, I think that led to a more systematic idea of spatial organization. There were not only kind of some sort of romantic idea of space, but it was more about looking at alternative ways to do with organization. I think that is the most critical period of that, research of that period, was organization of space or the plan, let's say. So I think it was continuity to this current the current iteration. I'm actually quite funny with students as well. I think that what is important for a teacher is to not only to show through encouragement and fear, scaring them to hell, that they can do the next step. Without that, it's impossible to teach. It is very critical. It's like having kids. You, on one hand, are nasty, the next minute you're nice. You have to constantly go between amazing encouragement, and I know from my own personal experience when I was a student, and I know through teaching, that if you explain to the students that there is something beyond what they know, and the fear is that they have to take that trip to an unknown place. And it has, when I was at the AA, there was no optimism at all. The early 80s was sincerely the most unoptimistic period in architecture. It was embedded to historicism. It was a disaster. And it took a few of us and the students to make that incredible risk, because I had no idea, and nobody did at the time, that risk would lead to anything. And that was really the important factor. I think that cities like Milan, of course, through the state, should decide whether the cities should grow beyond the boundary of the city or should deal with ideas of density. And I think if you deal with the idea of density of the city, it is important to invent a way that you can build, but also at the same time create a public space.
Architecture has a duty to develop the capacity to integrate with the most advanced developments in politics, economics, science, social movements. And I believe that the contemporary architecture we represent is doing this on a very sophisticated level. And in order to do that, there needs to be a degree of autonomy and self-referential closure in the expert discourse of architecture. And my formula for this is openness through closure. You cannot allow the discourse to be pushed to immediate reactions to issues. It needs to withdraw, reflect, elaborate repertoires, go through loops of formal research, technical research, and then make a contribution, a self-determined contribution on its own terms.
I was a student of Leo Krier, and maybe many of the students don't know that discourse, but it was a very important moment because at the time there were the rationalists, which of course reside in Italy mostly. We call them in England Razzies. So the rationalists, the postmodernists, the historicists, they converged together at that time in late 70s. And I felt in my third year, I was senior of Leo's, the next year I thought that I cannot believe at this juncture that the only way to move forward is to always look backward. The most difficult thing about architecture, I think it's a terrible profession. I mean, I'm sorry to say, it is the most demanding of all professions. I have friends in many businesses, in medicine, in music. There is nothing as more painful than being an architect. It is a terrible, but it is also the most exciting of all professions and, really very fulfilling. But it requires, as long as you know It requires tremendous diligence, constant updating and upgrading of your own talents, because people think, oh, you know, somebody's talented and sort of, but I know that even talent grows if you work on it. Ideas grow as you work on them. It is not enough to be just one thing or the other.